going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Paranormal Dwarf, where we investigate the history, mysteries, legends, and hauntings together. Tonight, we're boarding one of the most famous ships ever built, the RMS Queen Mary. Once the pride of the Cunard Line, today permanently docked in Long Beach, California. A place where luxury and tragedy became forever intertwined, and a place many believe remains one of the most haunted locations on Earth. This is the Queen Mary. For decades, she ruled the Atlantic, a floating palace, a symbol of luxury, a ship that carried royalty, Hollywood stars, world leaders, and thousands of ordinary passengers. But beneath the elegance and beneath the grand ballrooms lies another story. A story of war, of tragedy, and unexplained encounters that continue to this day. Some hear voices in empty hallways, others report shadow figures, and some claim they have encountered passengers who never departed the ship. But before the ghost stories, there was history, and history itself has a way of leaving echoes. Construction of the Queen Mary began in the early 1930s. Built during the Great Depression, the ship represented hope during difficult times. At nearly 1,000 feet long, she was among the largest and the fastest ocean liners ever constructed. When she entered service in 1936, the Queen Mary became an instant icon. Passengers experienced elegance unlike anything the world had ever seen. Grand staircases, lavish ballrooms, and luxury staterooms. Celebrities and dignitaries crossed the Atlantic aboard the ship, but beyond the glamour, and the Queen Mary represented something way more. She symbolized the golden age of ocean travel, a time when crossing the sea itself was an adventure, and for a while, life aboard the Queen Mary seemed almost magical. But as Europe descended into chaos, the ship's destiny would change forever, and the Queen Mary would soon become something very different. With the outbreak of World War II, luxury disappeared. The Queen Mary was transformed into a troop ship. Gone were the elegant colors, gone were the comforts. The ship was painted gray, earning her the nickname the Gray Ghost. Capable of carrying more than 15,000 troops at a time, she became one of the most important vessels of the war. Her speed made her nearly impossible for enemy submarines to catch her, and throughout the conflict, she transported hundreds of thousands of soldiers across dangerous waters. But war is never without sacrifice, and tragedy would soon find the Queen Mary. For one terrible day in 1942, the sea itself would become a graveyard, and the consequences would haunt the Queen Mary forever. On October 2nd, 1942, tragedy struck. While carrying thousands of American soldiers, the Queen Mary accidentally collided with the escort ship, the HMS Chiricoa. Following wartime procedures designed to avoid German submarines, the Queen Mary continued forward. The smaller cruiser was cut in two. Within minutes, the Chiricoa sank. More than 300 sailors lost their lives. Survivors later described the horror: men thrown into the freezing sea, screams echoing across the water, and helplessness as the Gray Ghost continued on. Though the Queen Mary had followed standing orders, the tragedy left a permanent scar, and some believe the ship itself never forgot. Because according to many visitors and crew members, that would not be the last time souls would remain aboard. Following the war, the Queen Mary returned to luxury services. Passengers once again filled the grand staircase, entered on the dining room hallways. Music returned to the ballroom, and for decades the ship resumed her place among the great ocean liners in the world. But time was changing. The age of air travel had arrived, and eventually ocean liners became relics of another era. In 1967, the Queen Mary made her final voyage. Retired from service, she was permanently docked in Long Beach, California. Many believe her story had ended, but instead, a new chapter was about to begin. The ship became a hotel. Visitors arrived, tours were established, and before long, the stories began to spread. Employees heard voices in empty corridors. Guests reported knocks in the middle of the night. Shadow figures appeared where no one should have been, and the Queen Mary slowly earned a reputation unlike any other, because some believe the ship had brought more than memories back to California. They believe it had brought passengers that were no longer alive back with it. But perhaps the most chilling reports came from those who worked aboard the ship, because they experienced things that could not be explained, and their stories would become the foundation of the Queen Mary's haunted reputation. Long before paranormal television made the Queen Mary famous, strange stories circulated among employees. Crew members reported hearing voices in empty rooms. Guests described footsteps above them despite no one occupying the decks above. Children's laughter echoed throughout the abandoned areas. Telephones rang without explanation, and doors opened on their own. Some claimed to see shadow figures walking throughout the hallways. Others reported seeing a woman dressed in clothing from another era. Engineers working below deck described hearing strange noises and voices where no one else was present. Even skeptics admitted there was something unusual about the atmosphere aboard the ship. Perhaps it was imagination. Perhaps it was history. Or perhaps something else remained. And nowhere would that mystery become more famous than the first class swimming pool. Because according to a lot of countless stories, a little girl named Jackie never truly left. And visitors still claim they can hear her laughter today. Although the first class swimming pool has been empty for decades, many consider it the heart of the ship's paranormal activity. Visitors report hearing splashing water, footsteps, children laughing, and voices echoing through the abandoned room. One name appears more than any other: Jackie. According to numerous accounts, Jackie is believed to be the spirit of a young girl who enjoys interacting with visitors. Investigators have claimed to capture responses from a childlike voice. Some report hearing her laugh, others claim she speaks. And several visitors have described seeing the figure of a little girl near the edge of the pool. Whether these experiences represent genuine paranormal activity or not, simply the stories passed through generations remain an open interpretation. But even skeptics admit there is something hauntingly beautiful about the possibility that innocence still lingers aboard the Queen Mary, and perhaps that is why Jackie remains one of the ship's most beloved spirits. But Jackie isn't one of the only spirits to claim to be an encounter, because below deck, in the darkness of the engine room, another story awaits, and unlike Jackie's, this one is far more tragic. Among the most famous stories aboard the Queen Mary is that of a young crew member named John Petter. In 1966, While working in the engine room, Petter was crushed by a watertight door, door number 13. His death shocked the crew, and employees and visitors have claimed to see a tall figure dressed in blue overalls wandering the engine room. Others described hearing knocks, footsteps, and unexplained voices. Some investigators claim to have captured strange responses during electronic voice phenomenon sessions. And many believe the spirit of John Petter still walks the lower decks. But perhaps no room aboard the ship has earned a reputation quite like B340. Over the years, guests have reported faucets turning on by themselves, blankets being ripped off from the beds, knocks on the walls, and figures standing beside them during the night. The reports became so numerous, at one point the room was removed from service. Years later, B340 reopened, and even today, visitors specifically request the room, not for luxury, but for the possibility of experiencing something unexplained. Whether the stories are paranormal or simply products of suggestion remains open to debate. But one thing is certain, the legends surrounding the Queen Mary continue to grow. Yet perhaps the greatest mystery isn't whether ghosts still remain on deck. Perhaps the real mystery is why the ship continues to capture our imagination and why people from around the world continue boarding her. Searching for answers, searching for history, and sometimes searching for ghosts. Today, the Queen Mary permanently is docked in Long Beach, California, no longer crossing oceans, no longer racing across the Atlantic, but somehow still very alive. To historians, she represents the final golden age of ocean liners. To veterans, she represents a ship that helped win a world war. To paranormal investigators, she represents one of the most haunted locations on Earth. And to millions of visitors, she represents something larger: memory, mystery, and the echoes left behind by those who once walked her decks. Perhaps that is why her story endures, but because every hallway, every stateroom, and every deck carries memories. And sometimes memories have a way of becoming legends, and perhaps some passengers never departed from the ship. Thank you for joining me in this investigation. Until next time, keep exploring the history, uncovering the mystery, and following the legends wherever they may lead.